Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here. And as the Permanent Secretary said, it's a particularly exciting situation right now to be at the cusp of new policy making, of policy discussions. And that for us at the OECD is always a dream situation, because we produce these books and these reports, obviously not to just have a book in hand, but to contribute to policy change. And when we have a situation like the one in Finland today, this is a very there's the cover of the report. Here you go. When we have a situation like today where this can really feed into ongoing policy discussions, that is very useful, and we hope that this report will contribute to those discussions and make its mark. And the other reason why we are so excited to present this Finnish report is that, as you know, everybody in the education domain loves Finland. And I have heard that some colleagues in the Finnish Education Ministry are already exhausted from all of these people storming from around the world saying, how do you do it? Why are you so successful? We want to have the same. And that is why the results that I will be showing you are particularly surprising for people from the outside, because how can you do so incredibly well in PISA and be the shining model for the rest of the world, yet have 2/3 of people who get rejected on their first try of admissions? And anybody who has teenage kids and remembers how they went through that process and that phase of life themselves, that can be very discouraging. If you try hard and you have been doing so well up until that point, and then suddenly things are not working so well anymore. And I think that's an important lesson both for the policymakers, but also for the rest of the world, to jointly look at what works and what doesn't. And so you can rest assured that this report will not only be interesting for Finland, but also for the rest of the OECD world. Now, as we said before, this is part of a larger project, a larger undertaking, and we've just put some markers here up for you. We started the Jobs for Youth reviews in 2006, and those Jobs for Youth were more around what are youth-friendly employment practices. With the financial and economic crisis, this became much more important then, because suddenly we had a situation where, particularly in southern European countries, there was massive youth unemployment, there were huge problems, and the European Union also put up the Youth Guarantee in response to that, saying we really need to do something. Then we started a second phase, which started in 2014, where we zeroed in, at the request of the member countries that were participating in these reviews, on NEETs, the so-called NEETs, those who are not in education, employment, or training. And so in a sense, the idea then was that countries said, okay, we kind of know what we need to do for youth employment in general, but we have a specific group of people who are at hardcore disadvantage, and what do we do with these? And we had very varying groups of countries here. For you, particularly interesting, because we have learned over time that Nordic countries like to compare themselves to other Nordic countries. There's also Norway and Sweden that participated. So if you want to know how your neighbors are doing, and also we have Latvia and Lithuania, not Estonia yet, so but at least you have also some more neighboring countries which have contributed to this. And so you see the different covers here. Here's the Norway one. We also had a summary in Society at a Glance in 2016. So you have plenty of reports that you can go to take a look. So now let's turn to Finland. I will give you some of the context and some of our findings and challenges, and then my colleague Velle, who led this work, will talk about the policy solutions, which are, of course, what everybody now wants to know about. But how does Finland perform in international comparison? Well, first of all, the youth employment in Finland, and here Finland is the black bar, and the OECD average is the white bar. And we have highlighted here the other Nordic countries. So this here is Sweden, here's Norway, and here's Denmark. And the best performer here on this chart is Iceland. So you can see that the Finnish youth employment rate, so people aged 15 to 29, is above the OECD average. So here, you can see it. But you're doing less well than all of these other Nordic countries. So that's news that shows you it's not so bad, but you can do better. Particularly if the other Nordic neighbors can, you probably can too. And some other factoids, which you will find all in the report, is that Finnish young women, and that is the good news for Finland, they tend to perform better than their counterparts in other OECD countries, but Finnish young men tend to perform worse. So you have a gender difference here, which is important. There's some other points. We have relatively high shares of Finnish youth that have temporary jobs, 44% of the age group 15 to 24. But this is, of course, also students working. So it's not, you really have to drive down to look at who are these people who are holding temporary jobs and for what reasons. Because we wouldn't be too worried about students working in temporary jobs, because actually we want students to work so that they gain professional experience. When they finish their studies, it's easier to integrate them in the labor market. And then we also have more young people who would like to work full-time but only find part-time jobs. That's 24% of all part-timers. And both of these numbers are higher than the OECD average. Now, let's turn to youth unemployment. And here, you can see the OECD average is here, the white, and this is Finland. So you can see that youth unemployment in Finland is far higher than the OECD average, and it is also, again, higher than the Nordic other countries. Here we have Sweden, which is the next highest Nordic, Denmark, and then if you go down here, you can see Norway and Iceland, who are doing much better on youth unemployment. So Finland is the 7th highest in the OECD, ranking just behind France and Portugal. Now this is really quite surprising for many people, because France is known as a country where there's lots of problems of youth unemployment, and that to have Finland so close to France and Portugal is quite surprising. Now, of course, this is not only a youth problem, but it's a problem of the economic crisis and employment shocks that Finland had to go through. So you had, of course, the global economic crisis. I don't have to tell you that. But then you have the problems in the electronic industries. You have the problems in forest, paper. And then also you're very much affected by what's going on in neighboring countries. So that is, of course, something where we have to be fair, I think, particularly when we're talking now, we're zeroing in on youth. We shouldn't be pretending that it's all a youth problem. There's also more global problems here, which points to another issue, which we at the OECD keep saying, if you want to solve youth problems, you really need an interministerial and intergovernmental approach. It has to be a challenge that's taken on by all of government, a whole of government approach to come to good results. Now, here's another Finnish specificity, and here you're the top, you're the leader. This is Finland. Finland has the highest demand for high-skilled workers of all of the OECD countries here. Here's the OECD average again, and we've broken it down into high-skilled, the blue here is high-skilled, and for the Finnish case it's black, medium-skilled and low-skilled. And that's the share of employment in each of these skills areas. And you can see that Finland, more than all others, other countries already have this demand for high-skilled labor. Now, in a sense, this is actually very good, because you are already at a position today where we know with digitalization and automation, a lot of the other countries will be going. You're already in that situation, whereas the others are still kind of not understanding what's going on, and many of them are starting to prepare, but they don't know. But of course, it also means you have the squeeze already. And so you need to cope with this in a sense earlier. And if you succeed that transition in Finland, you can be quite sure that the same thing will be happening as in PISA. Everybody's going to be coming to Finland and say, how did you do this? And how did you get people upskilled? But what it shows you is two things. That this is really important for the future, it is, and for the present. And it means that you have to act now, because you are already in this situation. So, we have a qualification mismatch in Finland already, because 9 out of 10 jobs in shortage are of the high-skilled type. And more than 1 out of 5 Finnish workers have qualifications that are below those that are usually needed or held by people who have those types of jobs. And this mismatch, so the fact that so much high-skilled, but still a lot of people who work in those jobs don't have them, is one of the highest shares in the OECD. And that, of course, what does that mean? It means a lot for your productivity also. Because if you have people working in those jobs who are not really that qualified, they can learn a lot on the job, but they could also do better if they had the qualifications coming into these jobs, and they could actually hit the ground running and do at the highest level what is needed. Now, what happens to low-educated youth? Now, the NEETs, those not in education, employment, education, employment, or training, are, we've broken them down here by the highest level of educational attainment. And you can see this here is the OECD average, and this here is Finland. And so it doesn't mean this is the composition of the NEET group. So the level of NEETs, the overall, is here. So Finland is here. And you can see it's not the worst. There's other countries which are doing very badly. And overall, it's not that dramatic. But what is dramatic here is the distance between those who have very low skills, less than upper secondary education, and the upper post-secondary and tertiary. So this spread between those who have low education and the others is very large in Finland. So that means that if you don't go all the way to upper or post-secondary education, it means that you are basically left behind. That's what it shows you. And that is, of course, this shows you the good news. It's good news and bad news here, right? Because this is an international comparison. The total level is not that dramatic compared to others. However, this year, those who are left behind are seriously left behind. And so you really urgently need to do something for the people who have low education levels. In a sense, it's, again, for policymakers, it's probably not that bad news because it shows you a clearly defined target group that you really need to focus on. And if you succeed that, you will be able to get your NEET rates down very substantially. Now, there's inactive NEETs, meaning these are people who are not looking for employment, they're not registered as unemployed. Who are these people in the OECD countries and in Finland, and why are they inactive? So there's a male-female difference here. Men in Finland, more than in most other OECD countries, have sickness or disability as a major reason for being NEET. So these are people aged 15 to 29. So this is quite striking. These people are sick, even though they're very young. We're not talking about older workers here. Other reasons, and discouraged. Some people, but this is less than 10%. So here is one of the indications, what's going on here? Why are young men sick and disabled? And we've also done a lot of work on mental health in Finland and disability, and we know that this is, of course, one of the main issues for the sickness or disability. Now let's look at women. Young women aren't that sick. Look here, they're only slightly above the OECD average, but young women drop out of the labor force completely because they have caring and family responsibilities. So these are young women being pregnant. Now, if you have teenage pregnancy, that's something in many countries because it comes with a lot of other social problems often where they drop out. But up to age 29, they shouldn't be dropping out completely of the labor force. So this is one of the indications that it's not only about the education system, it's about the health system, it's about the family policy system, and it's about the overall social integration of young people, men and women, for different reasons. Now, we've also looked at how long people stay NEETs. And this is a very important indicator in international comparison because the longer you stay NEETs, the more dangerous it becomes. Whereas if you do a gap year or gap months, or if you take time off and travel, those things are usually not so dramatic because you can be in transition between education systems, you can go abroad for a while, and so on. But if you stay for a long time, it becomes quite dramatic. So here's some good news, at least, that in Finland, compared to OECD, to the OECD average, there's only a third of the NEETs who stay NEET for more than a year. In OECD average, it's more than half, 53%. So that's good news. You have almost half of them who are 1 to 6 months, and if those are really people who are in transitions and kind of finding themselves, that is not so much of a problem. So a little bit of good news here. Now, let me hand over to Verle Miranda, my colleague who led this work for Finland, to tell you more about what we see as the policy challenges and where we see solutions emerging. Thank you very much.